welcome here. Oh, hi, hon. So we're going to just introduce ourselves, and this is our daughter, Milan. She's also going to be joining and chatting with us a little bit later. But we're going to just go back to that screen right there. There, I'm going to put us here. Can I do that? Okay, hold on. I'm just
That's fine like that.
leave it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's put up our family pictures so
Yeah,
we can see
sure.
everybody.
Yeah, so welcome here, folks. My name is Peg,
I'm Heather.
and we're going to just share a picture of our family. So this is our crew here. If you can see, I'm going to see if I can get other way. This is our crew. Is that showing up full screen for folks? So there's a Melissa coming in.
Yes,
So we have 4 daughters, and I think I'm just noticing that I think this is in the wrong. Sorry, folks. There we go. I'm noticing that there. I think you can be able to see it a little bit better. So these are our 4 daughters. We have 4 growing daughters in their 20s. And we have, so our daughter Josie is on the far right, and then Milan is in the middle, then Annie, and then Tessa is on the far left. And so these are our 4 daughters, and they each have partners right now, which is really fun. That they're we went camping this summer with them, and we had a great time with all of our kids together, which was really, really special. So we're going to be taking you through kind of the order of what we're doing here. Is Heather and I are going to kind of give that a little bit of history of psychedelics, and particularly psilocybin, a little bit about our own relationship with the mushroom, on how personally that we were impacted by our experiences in our psychedelic experiences, and then how it enhanced our own relationship and how it really changed our family and our family dynamic. And then we're going to bring Milan, our oldest daughter, into the conversation and really just ask her some questions and let her talk from her perspective on what it was like, and how she's involved in gathering groups now, how psychedelics has impacted her own life personally, and how in her mind how it has really kind of impacted our family. So that's kind of a fun experience to have, is to really hear from real life children of a family that's doing plant medicine. So that's kind of fun. So yeah, why don't you start, hon?
Yeah, so I'll just introduce myself, who I am, sort of where I come from. Or are you still sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we've been married for 33 years, Peg and I have. And I am a teacher. First and foremost, I've taught for 29 years. I'm also a therapist, got my master's in counseling about 12 years ago. And that's about it for me.
Yeah.
And then we started gathering a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
All right. You're up.
Yeah. So for me, I've done a lot of things in my life. Welcome here, whoever shows up. Hi. Hi, Danielle. So yeah, I was a minister in the Christian church, had a real passion to build community and connect with the divine. That's always been a deep part of my heart growing up, and became a minister. And then kind of quickly in my 20s, as I became a minister, really found that world was too small for me. And it's the view of God that was attached to fear. It just didn't sit with me. I couldn't connect with a God that was going to kind of send people to torture. And so that idea of hell and exclusion and kicking people out, there was just something really abhorrent about that. I really thought any idea that I had of God, which was pure love, was better than any version I was being taught in a church. So I'm like, well, my God's better than anything I've ever learned about. So this is all garbage then, right? So it's weird to kind of go into something for your livelihood and then have to kind of leave it, because it is really not, it's really not connecting you to love anymore, right? So I left that, got into into university and teaching world religions, still stayed in that sphere of spirituality, really had a longing to connect with something deeper than myself. I always had that. And then I started a nonprofit charity called Run for Water, and we worked in East Africa, in Ethiopia, empowerment with water and education. And that was a really powerful learning experience about how to work and decolonize aid and development. And that's really kind of what my passion was to really change how we did aid and development. And then encountered psychedelics in about probably 20, well, I first started researching probably 2015, 2016. And then it became an obsession and a passion for me as I understood what the possibilities that lay ahead for our civilization and our culture. And I got really, really excited about them in the last 5, 6 years. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about our background, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. So, for us, though cannabis is not really a psychedelic exactly, we that's where we started our journey, and we just sort of feel like it's an important thing to note. So, Milan, who you're going to hear from later, also kind of introduced us to to cannabis. But cannabis was something for us that really started to develop our relationship in a deeper way, of connecting when judgments sort of get put to the side and you can just show who your heart is. That's what happened to us using cannabis. So cannabis has been a really, really useful tool in our marriage, and also really useful in our occupations. I feel like, and this is always something that I feel kind of crazy saying, and if there's any of my students or families on,
Because you're an elementary school teacher.
I teach elementary school, but it improved my teaching practice so dramatically. I can't even tell you. I cannot tell you how many times we were, using cannabis just for fun. And I'd go, oh my gosh, I've got a brilliant idea for how I can teach a certain concept to my
The
students.
creativity.
So much creativity and insight and insight into how I thought they could receive what I wanted to teach, and so, or what I felt like they needed to learn. So anyway, cannabis, we do a little shout out for cannabis. It works really well for us. I know it's not for everybody, but that's been a really beautiful tool that we have used in our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think psilocybin. So a little bit about how I first kind of got into psilocybin and then what it did for me personally. I first encountered it through research, right? So it was really Johns Hopkins research that was coming out. My best friend was a marriage and family therapist, and so him and I worked a lot together. And so one of the things that we were just amazed at, there was some of this early research coming out in 2015, 2016 from Johns Hopkins, and they were really looking at end of life anxiety disorder, people dying of cancer, 6 months to live, and there was nothing to treat that anxiety. And we're not talking about a little bit of anxiety; we're talking about crippling fear of death. That overwhelms a person in their, let's say they're in their mid 40s or whatever. And the idea of all the possible loss, and that there's an end coming in months, and they just don't have anything to help those people. And they're just like, I don't know, like, sorry, like, what do you do, right? And so Hopkins began to look at the possibility of using psilocybin in with two therapists, prepping people for this kind of journey, using psilocybin with headphones and eye shades. They had a protocol they had come up with, and allowing people to go inside an internal journey with this. And then they were talking about, well, what happened? And people were saying like 90% of the people, we're not talking about like 10%. If you get 10% lift in a study, you're like writing about that. You're like, I can't believe 10% of people change. We're talking 90% of people had these incredible mystical experiences. They weren't people what were religious. They were people having these experiences with something larger than themselves that allowed them to make peace about their life. It gave them a story of their life, and it helped them kind of resolve things, help them to let go of pain or trauma or things that they've never really maybe had to dealt with in their life. And they were saying to the researchers, in that 5, 6 hours, I feel like I went through my entire life and let go of everything that I don't need to hold on to anymore. And I want to live each moment as if it's as important. And I don't want any more regrets. I'm done with regrets. I'm going to live my life with beauty and with presence from here on in, whether if I have a day or I have 6 months. And it was that when I started reading these results, I'm like, this sounds like I'm watching a movie. Like, it was so crazy to listen to these kind of anecdotes, right? And so then I thought, man, what's the possibility of this medicine, right? Like, I don't know about this stuff. And so we really began to look at it. And I had my first experience, I think it was about 17.
2018, I think.
2018, yeah. And so I had two therapists working with me, and did a high dose psilocybin experience, again with the eye shades and headphones, with the playlist track to kind of help you feel into it. And it was, yeah, it was the most profound experience of my life. And then I say that like, oh, that's, it's the most profound. There was no words to describe how profound it was, both in its beauty, in its feelings of love, its feelings of connection that I felt to something larger than myself, the connection I felt to myself, the connection I began to feel with my partner, with my daughters. It's like it opened up a whole part of me that I'd kind of never been able to access. I have ADHD, and so I get excitable and I get really, frenetic at times. And this allowed me to have a peace inside my head for that time that I'd never experienced before. And I felt like I had some agency over my thoughts, of rather than just being bombarded, I had some control. And after that, I mean, I came out of there just going, what just happened? Like, this is unbelievable that this is possible, that human beings can experience this. This needs to be felt by lots of people. This could be helpful. And so it was a radically transformative experience for me. I mean, I could go on for a long time about how many parts of my life were really impacted. My ADHD.
I was gonna say, just touch on that a little bit,
Yeah.
about the little space, the pause you
Oh,
have
yeah, man.
between
There's this,
stimulus and response.
yeah. There's a quote, right. There's a quote from Viktor Frankl, who was a person in the Jewish concentration camps in Auschwitz, and he was a psychiatrist, I think, and he was taking notes. About what was happening in the camps, about how some people would come in and in a few weeks they'd die, and just be, and other people could somehow last and stay somehow engaged in life. And he's like, the exact same things are happening to everybody. So what is it that makes the difference, right? And so he had this quote, and I'm going to read it because this is kind of what happened to me on my psychedelic experience. He says this: the gap between the moment something happens and your reaction to it, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is the power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And for me, all of a sudden, I felt a gap in my thinking. It wasn't just a bombardment of just a bunch of information in my head all the time, and I was just trying to catch up to it. I actually felt gaps in, someone could say something and I could feel a pause before I would respond. I'd never been able to do that before. And I had to cultivate it, and I worked with it. But that's what happened as one of the byproducts of that experience, let alone the increased interest in connection to spirituality, to other people, to journeying into myself, to know myself more with self-compassion. I mean, these are all the kind of outworkings that happened in my life just from one experience. And so I just thought, how do we create models that can keep people safe so they can have these kinds of experiences? So what about you? What were some of the things that
Yeah, I think
was impactful?
for me, I'll back it up a smidge and say, so Milan, our daughter, is on the call with us, and she's going to be talking a little bit later, but she was my first introduction to somebody I knew personally who had a journey. And when she came home and said, makes me emotional. She said, I've got to tell you something. I don't want you to be mad. And then she said, I've had a mushroom trip and I met the divine. That was kind of the first sentence. And in that moment, just even the way she presented herself, I thought, okay, this changes things for me. Like, I had grown up just going, all drugs are wrong. They're bad. They lead down horrible paths. And then my daughter, who I love and respect, comes and tells me she's had this experience and it's changed her life. And so that for me was like, okay, I think my moral judgments need to step aside, and I need to listen to her with an open heart. After that, Peg starts getting into researching and learning all he can. And his ADHD serves him really well in this way. When he thinks of something or finds something that he's curious about, he dives in and learns everything and anything he can.
It's
Gets
like
his
the
hands
kid
on.
with dinosaurs,
Yeah,
that 5-year-old kid that you're like, ew, that's me about this stuff.
And but anyways, he was telling me stuff all the time that he was learning, and I was fascinated. I thought it was really cool. But I had no idea he had more than just an intellectual interest. And one day he said, so I'm going to do one of these trips. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't realize that was the direction that you were going. And suddenly I was really afraid. I was so scared that, is he going to do something? Is it going to be wild? Is it going to change who he is? Is it
Right.
going to,
Like, will it break him? Like, what if it changes him
right?
and then I don't even know who he is anymore? He's a weirdo or something.
Totally. Or will it change our dynamic? As I was mostly happy in our marriage, and
Mm.
I was also scared you would die. And so that was, he found that actually kind of comical. And he was quickly and easily able to assure me that that's not going to
No one's
happen.
ever died with mushrooms. You
Right.
can't overdose with mushrooms. You can't die on mushrooms, which is a really great, yeah, really helpful to know that. Yeah.
So anyway, I knew he wouldn't do it without my approval. And so I asked as many questions as I needed to ask till I felt like, okay, I feel good about this. And so he had his first journey. And like he described, things changed in so many beautiful ways. But something he didn't mention that came up after his first journey was his emotional valve just like high, cranked up. And suddenly he was crying like all the time about everything, mostly about like relational stuff. Like the girls would come over and we'd be chatting to the girls and he'd be like, I love you so much. And, I'd be like, okay, calm down. It was an interesting thing to have happen. But a couple of things happened in that for me. One was I saw in Peg a reflection of me. I mean, I've already cried on this call. I am a crier, and I cry for a lot of things that probably
Mm.
don't warrant my tears,
Mm.
and seeing him react the way he reacted, it was like the valve was turned on for the first time, and he was feeling all the things that he hadn't felt before, or hadn't given himself permission to dive into before, and it was beautiful watching him navigate his way to finding a balance that fit him. So he cries a whole lot more now than he ever did before mushrooms, but he's found this beautiful balance where it's appropriate, and he just really allows himself to feel, and in that really started to see me so much more deeply, in a more connected way. I felt heard. After his journey, I went back and looked at my journals that I had written in prior to his trip, and it's funny because I don't journal a lot, but when I do journal, it's when I'm mad and I don't want to talk about it. So I write things down. And I was looking back at my journals, which were, occasional every 6 months or so. And my theme was I don't feel like Peg is valuing my voice the way I wish he did. I don't feel like he's really seeing me, or yeah, considering me as important as maybe a friend or whatever the situation warranted.
Mm.
And after his trip, that changed so dramatically. Suddenly, I felt like I was the most important thing in his life, and that has not changed. Like that has only grown. So that was so huge, and our dynamic just shifted a little bit to the place where I was like, I think I want to do a mushroom trip. And prior to that, I would never have considered it. But going through what he went through, I started to realize I've got some pretty serious things in my life that I would love to see change. And one of those things for me was fear.
Mm.
And I already had my master's in counseling at this point and never really made that connection that my fear was just anxiety. And I was like, no, they're legit fears. Yeah, it's anxiety. That's what that is. And so it was interesting. I set out and put in my intentions out into the universe and wanted help with that deep fear and anxiety. And it was mostly fear of death, fear of my death, fear of Peg's, fear of our kids dying. That was sort of the main focus. But it trickled through so many areas of my life that going into the mushroom and having those needs met was so astounding and so shocking for me. And that has changed so instrumentally in my life that it has made a change, like day to day. The way I live my day to day life has changed. When something happens now, if my immediate thought goes to some of those catastrophic thoughts that I've had my whole life, it's so quickly resolved. Like it doesn't take a toll on me in any way. And most often I don't have those thoughts at all anymore. So it has been so instrumental for me. But I think, and because the topic of this is sort of families or connections, marriage, or partnership, and using psilocybin as a way to gain connection, I can't imagine something that would have more power than what this medicine has. And the connection that we have, the being seen, feeling heard, feeling valued, has just been so absolutely incredible in my life. I cannot imagine my life the way it was before. And we always say that, like, and we had a good marriage. Like, I was happy with my marriage, like I said, for the most part, for the occasional 6-month journaling thing. But I say I have my mushroom, my life before mushrooms, and I have my life after. But I include Peg in that with me because it was a collective thing that we
Mm.
grew together in that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've rambled a lot.
No, that's great. I
Okay,
love
you
that.
go into
Yeah.
how
How the kind of what happened, like,
how psychedelics work. What are we
yeah.
doing? What's
So
happening?
there's one kind of like this is seen a lot, but it's such a beautiful image because it's like it can tell you more things that I can try to explain. So what we're looking at here is an fMRI image done by the lab in Imperial College London, and this one when it was with Dr. Robin Cartwright Harris. And so what they were looking at here is the left is placebo or kind of a brain at rest. This is just our normal kind of brain now. These are neural pathways, right? So these colored marks are how our brain communicates in the kind of neural circuits. So the moment that your brain is the psilocybin molecule attaches to receptors in our brain called the 5-HT2A receptor, there's this flood of connectivity that begins to happen. So the brain begins to communicate with itself in thousands of more ways than it does at rest. And so what does that mean? So that means your brain is firing and moving and shifting neural circuits around, and it actually can spark neurogenesis. So that's synaptic pathways are opening up brand new, and the brain can actually grow. So they're seeing psilocybin as an actual molecule that can create with neurogenesis. That means new brain tissue can grow. So they're doing research right now on dementia brains and brains with brain injuries. And so this isn't just like, oh, this helps us in therapy or something. We're actually seeing physical things happening in brain development when the brain is on psilocybin. So you see all these neural pathways that light up and begin to start activating. And what this means is what this is going to do is it's going to give you different ways of thinking about a topic. So let's say I'll just make it really, really crass and kind of really plain. You're in a relationship and you're stuck in a pattern in your relationship, maybe for 10 years. And you kind of always do the thing. You've talked to your partner about this thing and it doesn't seem to change. And it's really frustrating. You're like, we keep triggering each other because I do this and they do this. And then that we always just get into this dance and we just, psilocybin, what's it going to do is if you had intentionality to say, I really want to open up and say, what's going on here? Psilocybin has this opportunity to begin to give you a new way to thinking about these patterns that you're maybe stuck in. And you begin to understand maybe where they came from, how to let them go, how to soften, so that you can really be seen and heard by your partner. So that's just one example of kind of how this could work for, just for brain connectivity, right? Just for relationships, let alone fear circuits so what happens with psilocybin as well is our fear circuit, which is so important for brains, right? We need to keep safe. We need to know, is there a tiger coming? And I need to be able to react really quickly, right? That's our evolutionary strategy. Our fear is really fast, but the faster circuit in our brain is curiosity. That's really cool. And so if we can turn on curiosity, and psilocybin can do that. The way psilocybin works is it piques our curiosity and gets us into a curious state, looking for novelty, looking for new patterns, new ways of seeing, creativity. So they're recognizing that psychedelics, because of the chemical nature of how psychedelics work in our brain, can open up this kind of novelty seeking, this kind of creative thinking, problem solving. So if that works for a mathematics problem, which is what they do, they get a math problem, will try to solve it, then they'll take psychedelics and do the same, and they can solve it in way less time. They're just you have opportunity to access different regions of your brain. So if that can happen with math, it can happen in our relationships. We can get curious rather than scared and fear and retreat in reactivity. We can open our hearts more, right? So for us, psychedelics, not just on the neurochemical level we can talk about what's happening in the brain, but it's really about what it comes down to in the relationship. That these molecules, as we kind of open up to them and take them in intentional ways with proper set and setting, with good facilitation, and I'm not saying you can't do psychedelics outside on your own. You can. These are safe. There's certain safe ways to do these medicines, But if you've never done them, it's such a beautiful gift to do it with people who know what they're doing, who know how to curate an experience for you so that you can really get what you want out of this kind of journey. So that's kind of a little bit about how psychedelics work and why they're really powerful for dynamics like couples.
Yeah, I wanted to just add to, and maybe you said it and I just missed it, but that this neuroplasticity that takes place while you're on psilocybin extends after the journey is over. And you have, like, there's different studies that show sort of different amounts, but sort of the idea is that for almost 6 weeks afterwards, you're still neuroplastic. You've got access to these new neural pathways and access and options when you face something like, because sometimes people will have a journey and they'll say, the week after I got the same shit just happened again. And I was faced with stuff that I struggle with all the time. And it's like, right, you got an opportunity to react differently and see it differently and take that pause. And so the window of growth opportunity after a journey is present for almost up to 6 weeks, which is brilliant. And I was just going to say too, if you haven't already watched or seen, Netflix has How to Change Your Mind with Michael Pollan. That's a great show to watch if you want to know a little bit more about it and how it works. And also The Mind Explained, they have a specific half hour, I think, show on psychedelics, which is also a really, really great resource. All right.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick little, I was going to do the history of psychedelics like in like a minute, but don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like you can do it. You can find that online, lots of places. Just want to note, psilocybin, particularly psilocybin containing mushrooms, have been found on every continent around the world except Antarctica. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't find it in the ice somewhere. So our ancestors on every continent, on every tradition, have used and have eaten these substances, and so we believe that our earliest hominid ancestors were using these psychedelic mushrooms to gain kind of consciousness awareness and having dreams and kind of what we call abstract thought first came about, we think, because of our encounter with psychedelic mushrooms and the neurogenesis. Our brain developed very rapidly once we encountered them. And so our human beings are designed and have evolved with these substances. We actually have a receptor that binds to that receptor site, the molecule that binds to that receptor site. So we've been doing this as long as human beings have been on this planet. We've been working in altered states. It's only this kind of generation that is really, with this war on drugs, have really been shielded from the benefits of the research and the inclusion of these medicines in our culture and society. So we're really trying to reclaim something that's really ours as a birthright as human beings. And so it's really hard to go against a war on drugs that was started in 1974. And it's now just had this, and all these substances, these plant medicines got lumped into all these other drugs. And it's really sad. And so now we're in this process of teasing them out and saying, hey, hold on a minute. There's some plant medicines that are really helpful, and our planet needs them right now really, really badly, because we have an epidemic of loneliness, isolation, a lack of community, anxiety, depression. And these medicines are uniquely designed for that. They're designed to put us into connection with ourselves, to connect with other people, and to connect with something larger than us, so we feel like our life has meaning and purpose, so that we don't feel like we're just these kind of worker bees just working in 9-to-5 jobs just to keep capitalism going, right? We have these substances that can lift us and help us connect and ease some of our fears and anxieties. So for me, the most important thing that once I kind of discovered psychedelics was the power of group work. And this was an absolute game changer. I knew psychedelics in one-on-one therapy. They'd done a lot of work about that. But I hadn't seen them done in groups much. And so I encountered that model about 4 or 5 years ago, and we began to really develop a group model that uses 6 to 8 people in a group that meets online once a week to get connected with 2 facilitators. They meet 8 weeks. So 8 weeks, you meet in a little group online, and then you come, once you after 8 weeks, you come to the retreat center, which is, we have a retreat center here in the Fraser Valley. And then they have this 2-day retreat together. And then they integrate that for 4 weeks after together as a group. And that model is what we've been studying for the last 3 years. And we've just been awarded a clinical trial with Health Canada looking at group work with psychedelics for first responders. So that's going to be really exciting as we launch that at the end of this year and early 2025, and really showcase the power of why group containers are really the way forward for psychedelic medicines for so many reasons about co-regulation and ethics and integration. So, but anyways, I just wanted to put that up. Now let's talk a little bit about groups of couples that we've used, because we've done groups that we run with couples. So 4 couples in a group model. Let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've done a few different groups that have had all couples in them, and it is really quite a beautiful thing to witness. And the reason why I think it's so effective is that in life, I mean, I can think of so many conversations that you have with anybody, but especially your primary partner. They divulge something to you, or they share their heart with you, and you're thinking, how do I fix this and make this better? And what's either what's my next argument going to be, or how am I going to talk you out of the emotion that you're in so that we can both feel better, because it's hard to sit with somebody else in their difficult emotion. And that's exactly what happens on these calls, is you have the opportunity to sit in somebody sharing their heart. So maybe it's your partner sharing their heart, and it's an uncomfortable emotion to sit in, and you sit there and have to sit there in it with them. And then you get the opportunity of watching other people reflect to your partner in ways that they then get to feel seen and heard, and you get to observe that. And the way we typically do it when we have a couples group is the first few sessions, we ask the partner not to be the one to respond. So we allow other people in the group to respond. But I mean, if the partner's dying to say something, they can. But it's a really neat practice to watch other people respond to your partner. And it starts to go, ooh, I see that really landed for him. I liked that. Ooh, I think I would have said this, and I think it would have caused a different reaction or whatever. So you get that opportunity to observe what it's like for your partner to be observed by others in a way that feels like heartfelt. Um, it teaches us how to communicate effectively with each other. So one of the practices that we learn in our groups is something called embodied listening, and listening with our bodies rather than having a ready answer, or rather than having advice to give,
Big thing.
or yeah, or
That's such a guy, like for me,
well, it's a
I know we
I
all,
do. I do it
it's,
too.
I just want to like, when you're sharing something that I was like, well, let me tell you how to fix that so that doesn't
Totally.
happen again. Like, I feel like
Totally.
I'm going to be of use by doing that.
Right, exactly. Or we have the tendency to cheerlead and just say, no, we think you're great, or you did fine, or whatever, instead of actually meeting the person in that emotion that they are in and allowing them to feel it fully so it can naturally pass through. And so that's something that happens when you get to be in a group with your partner. You get to witness that for them, and they get to witness it for you, seeing others witness you in a different way. We have journeyed together, and we got to journey together in a group setting with our daughter Milan, which was so fantastic. So the 3 of us journeyed with another 3 facilitators that work with us, while other facilitators of ours held space for us. And that was a pretty beautiful, I said, I, I'm so the wuss in the crowd. I was like, can I be between the 2 of you? I'm the mom, but I want to be between. And, Milan's our
We're in
daughter.
a circle. We're like,
We should have circled her, but she graciously let me go in the middle. So that was really nice.
yeah, I think one of the things I'll mention is there's about 2 or 3 kind of modalities of how people have been using psychedelics with couples. So first one is on individuals. So they'll take couples, and this is all usually therapeutic, right? So that therapists will say, "Hey, we're working on a dynamic as a couple, and I'm going to work with you now. I'll take the guy, and we're going to do a journey with you and really help you work on some of your attachment wounds and some of your pain. Then I'll do a journey with you as the wife, and that kind of stuff, and then we're going to help you find each other." So that's we've heard of that, and we've worked with couples like that. And then the most common way is, again, therapeutically, a therapist will bring in a couple that is maybe in the midst of kind of navigating some things, and they'll use plant medicines. So it can be ketamine, maybe some low dose ketamine where they can talk, and so that we've seen that modality used. MDMA, that's been another medicine that's been used in British Columbia here. That's a medicine that has been taken off. It's no longer kind of illegal in small doses. And so it becomes now something that therapists can kind of say, hey, MDMA is a really powerful medicine to really feel heart opening. And so maybe, use this for couples. And so, that's another way. for us, we're going to be talking about the model that we've really landed in, and is in this group space of bringing couples, whether it's all couples or whether we invite a couple, whether a couple comes into a mixed group that is not couples, it doesn't matter. But bringing couples into a group model is really powerful, because what it does is it's not just about them. It's about them personally. It's about them as a couple, and it's about their ability to see and hear other people. And it's in that practice of learning to see other people in a group that you actually are learning that skill of learning to see your partner. So it's almost easier to practice on someone that you don't have that same reaction with, right? So now you're in a group and, you know, someone else shares, and they're time shares. So they're only 3 minutes long, so that it has a beginning and end. You have to share from your heart. So it's a very structured model of how we do sharing. Then you have to, and the way you respond to someone is from your body, of like, here's what's coming up for me, and I was listening to you talk. And you hear, so, you know, imagine Peg responding to someone else in the group, and Heather's watching me give emotional feedback to someone, and she might go, whoa, that really landed for that person. I long for that. How can he do that for me, right? So it almost becomes easier with other people at first. It's like training wheels. And then by week 4, we begin to turn that practice into the couple dynamic. And then once we've got some tools built into the group, then we move into a retreat setting. And so to rush to medicine, to me, is really not an ethical, wise way to work with psychedelics. One thing we found is, and we're really big on this, is preparation, preparation, preparation. I know there's lots of talk about integration. What we have found is that integration happens naturally if you're prepared properly. If you're not prepared, you're going to have a real hard time integrating, because you don't know how to navigate that space. You don't know how to share with others what's coming, how to ask for what you want. All these really important skills that are going to be required later are not taught before. So for us, this 8-week prep is absolutely foundational. We can't cut it shorter. These are the tools you need in order to do this kind of work in altered states, and then integrate that later. So we love this group model, and it's been really powerful to see couples transform using this kind of model. Yeah.
Something that we talk about in our groups is, or in some of the what am I looking for, tools and strategies that we give, our breathwork techniques. So every session starts with a breathwork technique of some sort that we learn together, practice together. We use the practice of RAIN that Tara Brach has been widely known for. Others have done it as well, but a way of working with our feelings, which is just when a feeling comes up that's strong and big, I recognize it, I allow it to be here, I investigate it, getting curious about it, and nurture myself through it. So we go through practices like that, like RAIN and breath work. We also touch a little bit on IFS. So if those of you, maybe some of you know what that is, Dick Schwartz, the psychologist, has made that one quite popular. So it's internal family systems, and the concept that though we are a whole, we have parts, and part of me sometimes is upset or angry or hurt. I can hold multiple emotions at the same time, because it's different parts of me feeling different ways. And so we talk about internal family systems a fair bit, which also is really useful with your partner or with your primary person in your life or people in your life. Because often what happens is when we have conflict with somebody else, it isn't our wise core self that is reacting, it's a part of us. And quite often what happens in marriages or in long-term relationships is, in the early days, maybe yourselves meet each other, or maybe parts meet each other. But as time goes on, this part might irritate this part, and these parts start finding conflict
And getting into patterns.
Yeah. Rather than operating out of like your true core self, and letting the wise parent sort of step up. There's a quote. Do we want to read this?
No, you know what?
We'll skip it.
I'd love to get into yeah, and
totally.
and then lots of Q&A and stuff like
Let's
that.
do that. Okay.
So
Perfect.
yeah, just we really want to, because we've got this beautiful opportunity to have our daughter on this call, and just kind of allow her to, you know, jump in a little bit, and so we asked Milan to join us tonight to give us some context, to say, you know, from your perspective, first of all, Milan, tell us about that, you know, that psychedelic journey that you had when you were about 16, and you know, yeah, get us into that a little bit. Why was that, and what was transformative about that?
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I would have been 18, I guess, when that would have happened. But like I was kind of thinking about, because there was two experiences that I had with psilocybin that year that were very significant. So the first one that I had, I was actually with my boyfriend at the time. So we'd been dating for about 6 months, and then he was like, "Hey, my sister can get us some mushrooms. Do you want to try mushrooms?" And I was like, "Well, I've never done those before," but he had introduced me to weed as well, and so I was kind of curious. I really loved cannabis at that time. And so I was kind of curious, like, well, if what I knew about cannabis was wrong, then maybe mushrooms is also worth a try. So I was really glad that I tried it with him, because it felt like we just did it in his room, and it was just like a very connective experience. Like we'd been dating for 6 months before, but we called it our first date, because it was like, just like you guys were talking about too, it's like all of your like fronts are down, you're just kind of there, honest and open with your person. And yeah, it felt like I felt so much love and so much connection. It was such a wonderful experience. And I was really interested, so that I kind of was processing that. I was really interested in having my own experience of like, what if I took a little bit more, and I was just kind of on my own, but I had some people watching me, like some friends that were kind of gonna make sure I was okay. And when I had that experience, it was very, like, completely transformative. I feel like mom, what you said, like my life before mushrooms or after, it felt like that was kind of one of those moments, because I did meet my experience of the divine, and so it felt so beautiful to almost be like, wow, I have proof in my lived experience that this grand love does exist, and that there's a higher power that cares for me, and I feel supported and loved. Yeah, and so that was extremely transformative, because it's like, what, to have that experience, like it's like you there's no words really. And so I learned the word ineffable, to be able to use that word, to be able, like, hey, here's a word that means I have no words, there we go. And yeah, and so I think then it wasn't too long after that where then I told you guys about that journey. And yeah, it kind of felt like, well, if I really want to be seen and to be understood, I need to share this, because it's like I can't go on and not have you guys know this. Like it just, and it was like, yeah, it just felt like there was so much beauty and so much love and growth, that I'm like, yeah, I don't want you to be upset that it was because of drugs, but like these are such a beautiful experience. And so yeah, I felt like that was that word of like, want the desire of wanting to be seen, and was like, I need to be able to share this, to be able to connect with you guys, and to be able to yeah, to
Mhm.
be kind of to have the attempt to be understood. So yeah, yeah.
So what would you say, because I don't even know what how you're gonna answer this, but we'll see. So what have you found has kind of changed from your perspective about us since we did psychedelics, like because you're what, you're 28,
Hmm.
yeah. So I mean you have a pretty good kind of perspective on us and our relationship. We've always had a good marriage, but so what changed for you in the dynamic of what you observed?
Hmm. Well, it was interesting, because I answered that question a little bit earlier today, and one of the first things that I wrote down was like, everybody, I would say, not even just you guys, but like me as well, and like the other sisters too. With plant medicines, we all became less reactive, and so it really felt like. And then Dad, even you saying like, oh, I with psychedelics I found a pause, it was like, yes, that was it, that was extremely beneficial. And so then, instead of just like one person reacting to another person, it's like, okay, let's take time to just actually see what's going on in in the situation, or in the dynamic, or whatever. And instead of just like, oh, I think I know what's the answer, it's like, okay, let's actually wait and like feel it, and see what's kind of going on. So I felt like the less reactivity. There was a lot of things where it was like more, something else I wrote was like there was more authenticity over like insecurity. So yeah, and like it felt like there was a lot of positives, like more love, more compassion, more patience. Like all of these things were changed and for the better. So
Yeah,
yeah.
even as you say that, I mean, it's like what a well, like it's so beautiful to hear, Milan, and I would say that's exactly what happens for people, right? More love, more patience, a pause between not so quick to go to reactivity, less fear,
Mm-hmm.
kinder. I mean, it, that's what happens. Like, what we want more of that in the world, you know? And here you are as our daughter saying, the home became, it was that, you know, we had elements of that, but you're like, this is what increased. It's like the fertilizer that got poured on, this is what started to grow, you know, an open, vulnerable place where we could be open and honest with one another and connect with our hearts and support one another like a family should, right? I mean, that's kind of what we got to be able to experience with all of you, and yeah, that's what else? I had another good question. What was the other question? Oh yeah. Tell me a little about your experience going through a gathering group, Milan, because
Oh
Milan,
yeah.
you've been through a group and you've also facilitated a group and
Yes.
you're a space holder when people come to Journey at the retreat center. Your background as a massage therapist and really working with the somatic level of the body has been so helpful. So tell us what your experience was like going through a gathering group.
Yeah, well, it's like I'm just like looking at my notes here, and like one of the lines I wrote was, I think we all just wish to be seen at a soul level and not get so caught up in small talk. And so I think that's one of the reasons why gathering was such a just like really profound experience, like definitely going through as a participant, because it was like, wow, this is how humans can interact with each other. Like I can, that embodied listening, that was a huge piece of like, okay, when you're saying this, I'm feeling this in my body and I'm going to share this with you. It's so much different than just like, oh yeah, that's really cool, or like it's a way different experience, a way different level of interacting. And then when I was facilitating, it just made me realize like, wow, how much I want this more in my life, like how much I want more interactions like this, more like let's get to a deep soul level, and I don't even have to know anything about you. Like it's so fascinating that it's like you know, you don't know any maybe like specifics about the person or just what they're wanting to share, but you can still like love them so deeply and care about them so much. And so I think like it's just, yeah, it's something really beautiful, really spectacular. And like same even as a space holder, where it's like I haven't even been in a group with you for, I've never met you before, this is my first day I'm meeting you, but I can trust that this process has prepared you up until this point, and I know that I've been doing my own work, and so I can stay grounded and I can stay present for whatever's going to come up in the journey day. And it honestly just feels like such a gift every time I get to hold space. Like it's like, wow, we get to watch these transformations, and like it's magic. So there's a reason people call them magic mushrooms. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Milan. Yeah, and you know, I'm aware that we kind of want to make this a bit interactive. So we'd love to have questions, and please feel free to ask Milan questions too. I know she's open to that and is really supportive of this work that we're trying to do. And so yeah, we'd love to open it up. I saw a couple questions in the chat here that I wanted to address as you feel free to come off mute and just jump in. So yeah, so someone said here, what if one half of the couple goes? What might happen? It's you know, most of the people that come into our program, it's usually just, you know, one of there might be in a partnership, but usually just a single person that's coming in. And here's what we found: it can be really, really beautiful, even if one person goes through this process. But what we have been finding is that we're learning through this process that we need to help the person that's not journeying understand what this process is going to happen. What's going to happen is this person, that your partner is going through a deep transformative process. They will not be the same in the sense of like, they'll be the same them, but they will have patterns that will shift for them. This is not neutral. This isn't cognitive behavioral therapy that really needs you to really get in there and do lots of cognitive work. This is a deep somatic process, and it can help you really let go of things in a matter of 4 hours. So we need to help the other partner that's not going through that experience, support that person. So what we need to do in the psychedelic industry is do far better prep work with the family members who aren't journeying. That's the area we've really missed a lot. We've focused on kind of the person that wants to transform, and we haven't worked with the system that this person is going back into. And so, family behavioral therapy or systems theory really understands that you can only get as healthy as the system is, right? So if you're in a toxic family and one person goes to get healthy and they go back into a toxic family, guess what? They'll go back in and they become toxic again. So the whole system has to transform, right? That's why for us, we want to help marriages, long-term couples, family systems. We want to help those systems really get into this kind of work so the whole system can transform and we can heal communities, not just individuals. So yes, one person going through it is great, but imagine if both said, hey, we're both willing to do this work together. Oh, that to me is really powerful transformation. So yeah, so we work with the couples, the partners that haven't gone through as well. So that's
I would also
important.
like to say, you can't rush this either. Like if one partner is not ready and doesn't want to do it, trying to talk them into it is not a
Yeah.
great idea. Like it sounds mystical, but I know I'm not alone in this. I know lots of people feel this way too. So it's only as mystical as, all those out there that, that agree with me. But I think that the mushroom has an intelligence that calls you. Like I feel like when Peg had his first journey, the mushroom and I had not had any kind of a connection yet, but after he had had his journey, it was almost audible. Like it wasn't audible, but it felt so clear to me that it was almost audible, that the mushrooms were saying, it's your time. Like this is something you need to do. And so I caution people to jump into it without giving it some serious thought, because it has got it's a powerful thing to take part of, and it will change the dance in whichever relationships you're in. It'll change up the dance steps. You will change up your dance steps because you'll see things differently. You'll see things more clearly for yourself. And so I feel like it's important to say, don't try to push somebody else into it.
Mhm.
But if it is something that you yourself really, really want to do, and you've got a partner and you think that it might be something you could do together, get educated. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
rush into a group. You can get educated and take the time you need to figure out if this is something that you both want to do, or if it is something that one partner wants to do first. And because we've had lots of that where one partner comes to a group, and when the group is done, their partner goes, "Oh, I do it now. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Like I got to see it from the sidelines, and now I feel, assured it's going to be okay for me," or whatever the situation. So, and knowing too that it is a powerful medicine and things can come up. Like things may come up that were unexpected. And we always say that the mushroom won't necessarily give you what you want, but it will definitely give you what you need. And so for some people, it can be a very, one of you guys talked about this, I think you did, a very embodied experience, somatic. It can feel physical. One of my journeys, I felt like I was in labor. It wasn't to the same painful degree, but it felt like my body was going through labor. And as I worked through that journey and came to the conclusion of it, and as things started to land after that journey, gathering was birthed shortly after that. Like it was what I needed to move through, embrace, give birth to be able to walk into this line of work and to give up my other line of work that I really did love.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You've been teaching for 29 years, right?
yeah.
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 And so to say, hold on, I'm gonna shift from that into something new.
Right.
Yeah. You
Took a lot of
really,
courage,
yeah, totally.
which I
Yeah.
didn't have a lot
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Yeah, so someone Ian just said in the chat here, it can be awkward if one partner goes through the psychedelic process, and if the partner isn't fully on board and approving, then they can blame the sitters for interfering with the relationship. Yeah, you know what? A really good point, Ian, is that you really need lots of consent to this process, right? You cannot kind of you kind of trick someone into coming to a psychedelic retreat or something. Like this has to be something you both are feeling like, hey, let's go do this together. We really want to deepen our relationship. We want to connect. You know, this is not, we don't put this out as like, hey, here's how to fix your marriage. Like this is you're about to get a divorce and you've tried everything and let's do psychedelics together. Like that's not really what we're talking about. Like this is that might work, but that's not how we've designed this model, right? This model is really about and again, you can go through it as an individual or you can go through it as a couple, but the model is really about getting in touch with yourself, and looking at those kind of the deep kind of frameworks that have maybe you've been patterned in your whole life, and then maybe look at them and saying, huh, do I really want, am I stuck in some of these? Is this what I want to be like? And it allows you some kind of, okay, I want to give up some things. And then this substance comes along that can really kind of help unstick it. It's like a little oil in the pan. It just helps unstick stuff. And it can really help you let things go. Psychedelics are a tool. It's not a replacement for communication, for authenticity, for trust building, for all you need those kinds of tools, but psychedelics can be an incredibly helpful tool to really help you feel into your relationship, how beautiful it is, appreciate it, feel gratitude toward it, and really open up love, right? And so yeah, so that's this, like for us, that's such an important part of working with psychedelics is who are you doing this with? Have you vetted them? Do they know what they're doing? What kind of prep are you doing here? What's the dose? All that kind of thing are really important as you kind of journey into this. And so for us at Gathering Groups, we've really tried to create a really safe, experience for that. Great question. And we had here, what happens if in this experience, Emily says, that you realize, man, I just don't come out of this and I just don't feel the love here. And you know what? Every relationship, has its beginning and it might have its end of its story. And so that story may end. And we are not here to kind of try to keep every relationship intact. Each relationship has its own dynamic and its own texture that has to be, respected. And if from this journey, the one person gets a voice and finally says, yeah, this isn't working for me. I do not feel that this relationship is really going to allow me to grow in the way that I really want to grow. And hopefully then that this process can help them uncouple in a really beautiful way, not in, anger and, bitterness and how much of the house am I going to get versus you. And now we're with lawyers and now we're using kids as pawns. We've seen that played out thousands and thousands of times in our culture, and it's horrendous. We see it, right? These molecules, these substances can help us break up better, can help us be kinder in how we do this. So, man, I would love to work with a couple and say, let's do some MDMA and then we'll talk about breaking up, right? Like that kind of stuff. And then let's find, okay, right, this is what I love about you as a mother. And I'm going to respect you as a mother of our children and honor you for that. And these substances can help people get in touch with that. So yeah, so this isn't about how to, keep a relationship going at all costs. This is about really giving agency to the people in these relationships. Danielle, you had a question here. Go for it. Thanks for raising your hand. You're in.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, my question is about like the day of the medicine journey. And you already talked about different approaches of like with the eye shades and the music. What is your approach with couples? Is there more dialogue or yeah, maybe you can just speak to how you facilitate on the day of.
Sure. Well, one of the things that because we work with about 3.5 grams of golden teacher mushroom, that's the substance that we use. So on that dose, the first part of your journey is going to be really internal, and we actually want it to be. So the first half of your journey, we're going to encourage you to keep your eye shades on and really stay in the playlist and kind of do your own inner work. Everyone needs to do that. But what we do with couples, and even in our group model now, is as our facilitator team is really skilled at working with people. So we've had over 60 retreats and probably 400 people going through this already. So what our facilitator teams are getting really good at is, as people are coming out of the medicine and has different peak states, they might take their eye shades off, they might stay in the music, but maybe they want to draw, or maybe they want to turn as a couple as they're both coming out and they want to talk, or they maybe want to go off to one of their rooms while they're still feeling the medicine, but it's coming out of them, but they're in this really open state. So we might have a few prompts. We might have a few journal prompts that we give them and say, hey, here's a couple questions. While you're in this place, go in together and sit for each other for half an hour and maybe just share your heart with one another in this kind of space. And then we always encourage them to come back into the group setting, because it's in this group process that we really find that people heal and are seen. And as a couple, they can heal by other couples witnessing them. So, imagine a couple says, here's what we see in the two of you. Here's what we have seen over the last, over these last 8 or 9 weeks. And so you hear another couple witnessing some of your strengths, how courageous you've been to try to be honest with one another, and maybe even the points that you've got stuck. And then they see that and say, oh, I really see, Heather, that you've really grown in advocating for yourself. You're really standing up for yours. That's so powerful. So now it's not just me or even a therapist saying that. It's a community advocating for this couple. And it has I'm telling you, when you feel that from other people that are on your level and you're not paying them, they're not your therapist, you're not paying them $200 an hour to say, keep going. That's not happening, but it's another couple or another person witnesses something. Whoa, that's going to land very differently than a therapy session. So these group community models, to me, are incredibly powerful at building that kind of bond back in together. So yeah, it's the first part's a bit more internal, and then we kind of let people out a little bit to feel into that medicine as they're coming out of it. And then we regroup them back into the container. And then we'll have dinner together, and then we'll have an integration circle, sometimes around a fire. And we just really work that group container, for that Saturday night and then the Sunday morning again. So yeah, I hope that answers a little bit, Danielle.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That was great.
Yeah. Someone else, just feel free to come off mute or put your question in the chat. And
I'll throw something out there while we're waiting for somebody else to ask a question. When I had my first journey, it was a solo one with my therapist and his wife, who I know really well, felt really comfortable with them both. And it was an amazing journey for me. My second journey was solo with just Peg, and then all 4 of our girls came in at some point in time and had a connection with me, which was beautiful. And then the third one, we had already started gathering, and a group of us facilitators were sitting around talking and going, Kate, how many of us have actually done psilocybin in a group? Like, we're doing this and we're telling people this is great, and we haven't actually experienced it ourselves yet. We had all had our own individual journeys. And so that's when we decided, hey, as facilitators, let's a couple of times a year trade off and hold space for whoever wants to journey among us. And what I found, I was really scared doing it. I was super scared to do it both the first 2 times too, just because that's kind of my natural bent. But the third time doing it in a group brought on all sorts of other things for me that I was like, this is gonna, like, you're kind of at your most vulnerable, and I'm gonna be with a bunch of people. But it was exactly the opposite experience for me. I found such incredible courage in the group setting. It felt like this different, palpable energy that gave me courage that wasn't even my own. And there were moments for me where, something came up in my journey that felt a little bit like, oh, this feels like maybe the music felt a little dark or something. And all I did was just lift up my eye shades and peek out and see that there was 6 other people doing exactly what I was doing right now. And that gave me such encouragement to stay the course and do my work and stay focused on what I had laid out as my intentions. And so just to say that, I know the idea of doing this in a group can be intimidating, but after having that experience, I'm like, I am never going to have a solo journey again. I will always journey with other people around me that are doing it too, because it gives me such courage and strength.
Yeah. So we do have a couples group launching September 18th, and it's on our website. You can go to gatheringgroups.ca and check out our launch of that group. So we'll be meeting Wednesday evenings from 5 to 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're doing that to accommodate a few people in a different time zones as well. We know that's a little tight for some people on the West Coast, but hopefully that works for some folks. And then our retreat date is November 8th to the 10th out here in the Fraser Valley, just outside of Vancouver. We have a retreat space here, and it's a beautiful farm, and we would just love to share our place with you. And this is the place where we raised our kids, and so now it's this loving home becomes this really beautiful facility to do these kind of journeys. And so, if you know someone or this at all appeals to you, or you're interested in it, please, we'd love to we'd love to hear more from you. And from this, if you're like, hey, we'd love to have a one-on-one call with you, Peg and Heather, more than willing to do that. This is a very important kind of big decision to make, and it costs a lot. Like this is, because it's facilitated with therapists and nurse intake, and there's an evaluation, and we have space holders. It's a very robust program, but our cost is it's $34.95 per person. That's Canadian. There are, if you have medical benefits in Canada, if you are on a plan, insurance plan, you do get, let's say you do get coverage for psychiatry or therapy. We're getting about 70 to 80% coverage through Pacific Blue Cross, Standard Life, because it is a 12-week model, and it has an RCC therapist attached to it. So that model is considered a therapeutic intervention. So you can get coverage. So that's a really cool thing. But for the couples group, we are taking $500 off per person for if you sign up as a couple. So it'd be $29.95 per person if the two of you sign up. So yeah, we're excited about that. And if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. I'm going to put my personal email in here as well, and you can feel free to email me. It's peg@gatheringgroups.ca, and you can reach out to me and Heather. We can jump on a Zoom call one-on-one or a phone call. Danielle, I saw your hand there.
Yeah, I just had a question reacting to your suggestion, like if we know a friend. So I noticed this call is recorded. Is this
Yep.
like a recording that we can share for?
Yep.
I just hadn't even thought about it. But when you
Mhm.
talked about uncoupling, so it is a couple who's going through an
Yep.
uncoupling. So yeah, okay. So the recording would be
Yeah,
shareable
you will
outside
get
this
an
group?
automatic follow-up tonight.
Okay.
And then in that, tomorrow you'll get the link. So you'll get an email tonight, and tomorrow you get the recording. Yeah. Thanks so much, Danielle. And I would love, couples that are going through an uncoupling, this would be a really beautiful process just for them to even know, oh, hey, how do we honor this relationship? And particularly if they have children, like if a couple has children, this is a really sacred thing. They have fathered human life. They've parented this human life. So how do we honor that whole relationship that gave birth to this and raised children, and then let it dissolve? That needs to dissolve so they can become what they need to be, right, for their children and for each other. So this process would be really beautiful for that too. So I really like that idea. I never thought of that. So I'm really glad that you mentioned it. Yeah.
And Emily, just to respond
yeah.
to the fact that you had said it sounds safe, I just wanted to say I'm glad that you picked that up, because that is one of our values. Like, we have sort of 3 values there. We honor safety, which is our first one, and we honor community, and we honor spirit. And I think this is a vulnerable space to be in. And so we think the top priority is that anybody who comes into this feels so completely safe and has full agency right up until the moment of medicine. And if they on the morning of medicine go, I've changed my mind, then they change their mind. That's totally fine. And we've had people that have come to retreats that haven't taken the medicine but have participated and done breath work for the 4 hours, and that kind of thing too. So I'm glad you picked up the safety piece, and that is really key for us.
Well, before we end, Milan, is there any closing thoughts you had? Thank you so much for being on this call, hon. What are your thoughts? Why would you encourage someone to do a gathering group?
Oh man, yeah, just such beautiful words, you guys. I love the way that you kind of just brought everything of what you've learned and what you're doing into this call. It's so great. I think I would just like encourage anybody to do a gathering group who's a human being. So it's like, if you're a human and you have emotions and you live in this world and you experience life, then let's get connected. And yeah, it's worth it. So I think like if there's any part of you that's like, ooh, I'm curious about this, or ooh, I want to learn a little bit more, it's like follow that golden thread, like follow that. And maybe it won't be mushrooms that you end up taking, but it will, like, listen to your intuition, because it will help guide you where you need to go. And I think that that's the whole point of these psychedelics, is for us to listen to that self, capital S, self, that voice that can lead us. So yeah, I'm excited for all of your journeys in life or psychedelics otherwise, but it's awesome that you're here.
Mm.
Thanks,
What a
Mom.
beautiful, thanks, Annie. Yeah. Well, if there's no other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, September 18th, we got a group. Share that with some folks. Thank you, Milan, for coming on. Just so beautiful to have you. And if any of you folks again want a one-on-one conversation, no problem. We'd love to do that and sit with you and connect with you a little bit to help you make a decision like this. So anyways, thanks a lot for joining us tonight on this masterclass. Hopefully it was helpful and informative on how couples and families can engage with these kind of plant medicines for healing and growth. So anyways, I just saw someone jumped on the call, like they might have thought it started right now, but we're just ending. So, but you will get the link, so don't worry. So anyways, good night, folks. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
You want to stop the recording?